Have you ever felt like you finally arrived on your spiritual journey, only to be met with an eerie silence that followed? Like reaching a mountaintop, expecting a sunrise, but finding only clouds. Here's a truth rarely spoken: the moment you awaken is not your destination, it is your initiation. And what lies beyond that moment is far more mysterious than most are prepared for. What you're about to hear could change the entire way you see your awakening. So if anything within this resonates, leave a comment below, hit the like button, and stay with us until the end, because what we uncover last may just be the piece you've been searching for. And if this message is meant for you, trust that more like it will find its way back through the very platform you're watching this on. But for now, let's go deeper, much deeper. Spiritual awakening is often misunderstood as the grand finale, the long-awaited resolution after years of questioning, suffering, and searching. The signs, the synchronicities, the bursts of clarity, they feel like validation, as if the universe is applauding your evolution. And while this stage is profound, it is also deceptive. Awakening is not an end, but a beginning. It is the cracking open of an ancient door buried deep within your consciousness. And once opened, you do not step into paradise, you step into the unknown, into a reality that begins to bend, stretch, and reveal itself in ways that challenge even the most grounded beliefs. This isn't about floating above life. It's about diving beneath it, into your own shadow, into your raw, unfiltered truth. In ancient traditions, this doorway has many names. The Buddhists speak of the first glimpse of Kensho, the moment you briefly perceive the nature of reality, only to lose it again. In the Hermetic texts, it's described as the veil lifting, exposing the initiate to what lies beyond the illusion of form. But none of these traditions suggest the journey ends there, quite the opposite. They warn that this glimpse, this awakening, is only the first test, because what follows is not the high of enlightenment, but the descent into integration. And this descent can feel like regression, as if the magic is gone. But in truth, the silence after awakening is not emptiness, it's invitation. An invitation to walk forward without the crutch of cosmic science, to become the seeker and the guide. And here's the paradox: the more you awaken, the less spectacular things seem on the surface. There are fewer fireworks, less drama, less need to seek constant confirmation. Instead, there is stillness, deep, echoing stillness. And this can feel like a void, especially if you've built your identity around the initial thrill of awakening. You may start to wonder, did I lose it? Am I going backward? Why does it feel so quiet now? But this quiet isn't absence, it's presence. It's the sound of your soul no longer needing to shout to be heard. And this stage is where most turn back, thinking the path has ended, but in truth, it has only just begun. The journey ahead demands more of you, not in effort, but in surrender. And in that surrender lies the transformation you never saw coming. So what happens next? What lies beyond that doorway? If awakening is just the start, then what is the path it opens onto? This is the question that lingers in the silence. It's what keeps the newly awakened soul restless, searching for the next sign, the next revelation. But here's the twist: what comes next may not look spiritual at all. It may look ordinary, unremarkable, even uncomfortable. Because the next phase isn't about seeking outwardly. It's about descending inwardly, into the bones of your being, into the places within you that were never touched by light. And that is where the real alchemy begins. But we won't go there just yet. For now, sit with this: awakening isn't your final form. It's your rebirth. And what comes after is where the real mystery lives. You've crossed the threshold. The signs have led you here. The energies surged, your senses heightened, and then silence. Where there once were synchronicities lighting your path, now there's nothing. The visions, the chills, the uncanny alignments all gone. The universe, once loud and responsive, has grown inexplicably still. And you ask yourself, what happened? Did I lose my connection? Did I take a wrong turn? This stillness can feel like abandonment, like being cast out of the mystical current you once swam so freely in. But what if I told you? This silence is not a sign of failure, it's evolution. And it's in this stillness that your truest transformation begins. In the initial phase of awakening, the universe often seems hyper-communicative. Angel numbers, dreams, intuitive hits, profound emotional waves you feel constantly plugged in. It's a spiritual high, one designed to crack you open, to awaken your awareness to the unseen layers of existence. But this is only the initiation. Once you've seen enough to believe, the outer fireworks cease, not as punishment, but as empowerment, because the path now shifts from external confirmation to internal realization. The loud voice of the universe softens, so that you might begin to hear your own. The quiet is not emptiness, it's a space being cleared for your own essence to rise. This is where many falter. The silence feels like regression, or even punishment. Doubts creep in. Was it all just in my head? Why don't I feel anything anymore? But this perception is born from conditioning. We are trained to associate presence with stimulation, and silence with absence. But in spiritual evolution, silence is not absence. It's presence distilled. It's what remains when the noise is gone. In the stillness, your energetic field is recalibrating. Your nervous system is integrating frequencies it was never trained to hold. You're becoming, but becoming quietly. Like roots growing deeper beneath the surface, invisible, unstoppable. Ancient spiritual teachings knew this phase well. In Christian mysticism, it's called the dark night of the soul, a sacred silence where God seems absent, but is actually closer than ever. In Eastern paths, it is the void, the state between destruction and rebirth. It is where the soul is forged, not through visions, but through stillness, through surrender. This is where the journey turns inward, not to chase, but to embody. And in that embodiment, you begin to recognize something extraordinary. You no longer need science, because you are no longer seeking outside of yourself. The guidance is becoming internalized. You are starting to trust your own resonance. So the question becomes, if the universe is no longer sending you signs, how do you know you're still on the right path? This is the riddle of spiritual maturity, and the answer, paradoxically, is not found in the mind. It's felt, a subtle alignment, a quiet knowing, a peace that doesn't shout, but hums beneath the surface of your being. The stillness isn't a void, it's a mirror, and in that mirror, you begin to see who you truly are. No longer just a seeker, but the very source you've been seeking. But we're not done. Because once you begin to tune into this inner voice, something even more powerful begins to shift. Your very presence becomes a message, and you become the sign. At some point along the spiritual path, a strange thing begins to happen. The signs fade, the synchronicities grow subtle. The universe stops speaking in loud, magical whispers. But not because it has abandoned you, because it has moved into you. And this is where many feel lost, even betrayed. You've grown used to being guided by patterns outside of yourself, by numbers, animals, dreams, and sequences. And now, silence. But what if this is not silence at all? What if this is the moment you've been being prepared for all along? The moment when the universe no longer needs to send you messages. Because you have become the message, you have become the sign. In this sacred stage of awakening, something profound shifts. You stop looking outward for confirmation, and instead, your body, your thoughts, your feelings, your energy, they become your compass. The whisper you once heard from the universe is now a hum within your own being. This is not the beginning of disconnection, but the embodiment of trust. It's no longer about decoding the external language of spirit. It's about becoming fluent in your own frequency. And this inner tuning is not imagined. It's felt. Deeply, you walk into a room and know whether you belong there. You meet someone and instantly feel resonance or dissonance. You begin making choices, not from fear or desire, but from alignment. And that is the birth of inner sovereignty. But this phase can be disorienting. Without the old signposts, the mind panics, the ego wants proof. It wants the external validation of rightness. But inner guidance does not prove itself, it simply is. And that simplicity is threatening to the complexity of the mind. You may even miss the drama of signs and synchronicities, not realizing that they were training wheels preparation for the moment you could ride the current alone. The stillness you feared becomes your baseline. And in that stillness, a quiet confidence grows. You stop second-guessing, you stop outsourcing your truth. You begin living from an uncheckable knowing that cannot be explained, only experienced. Spiritual texts across traditions hint at this stage, but rarely speak of it in depth. In Taoism, it is the effortless flow of wu-wei action in harmony with the way. In mystical Christianity, it is the state of grace where one's will merges with divine will. In yogic philosophy, it is the alignment of Atman with Brahman, the self with the infinite. These are not metaphors, they are real, embodied states of consciousness. And they are marked not by ecstasy, but by clarity, not by fireworks, but by presence. You no longer need the universe to shout, because you have become still enough to hear the whisper of your own soul. And here's the secret most won't tell you: once you become the sign, your very presence begins to affect others. You walk into spaces and shift the energy without speaking. People feel something around you, something they can't explain. That's because you are no longer transmitting from ego, but from essence. You don't need to preach or prove, you simply are. And that being becomes a mirror, reflecting back to others what they're ready to awaken within themselves. But what happens when this inner alignment begins to change your physical experience? When the integration moves from energy to the body itself? That's when we enter one of the most misunderstood phases of the journey, the awakening of the physical vessel. You've felt the shift inside, the silence, the stillness, the sense that something within you is changed forever. But now, your body begins to speak. And not with lightness, with weight. Fatigue creeps in like fog. Your sleep patterns shatter, random aches surface. Emotions bubble to the surface without warning. What's happening? Isn't awakening supposed to bring peace, not pain? But here's the secret no one told you: when your consciousness evolves, your body must follow. And that process is rarely comfortable. Because the truth is, your body has been carrying lifetimes of density, trauma, conditioning, and now it's purging. You're not broken, you're recalibrating. You're shedding the energetic skin of an old self, so your physical vessel can hold the new frequency rising within you. Energetic awakening is not just a concept, it is an embodied event. Every shift in your vibration echoes through your nervous system, your hormonal balance, your cellular memory. And when the spiritual body expands, the physical must catch up. That's why, during deep phases of awakening, many report symptoms that mirror illness: nausea, dizziness, pressure in the head or chest, intense dreams, sensitivity to light and sound. But these aren't malfunctions, they're markers of integration. Your body is learning to hold more light, more awareness, more presence. And to do that, it must flush out what no longer resonates. The fatigue, it's your system rewiring, the emotional waves. They're residues being washed out from the depths of your being. Science is slowly beginning to recognize this. Fields like epigenetics and neuroplasticity hint that the body's ability to restructure itself in response to internal states. Mystical traditions have always known it. In Ayurveda, this process is called sattvic purification. In traditional Chinese medicine, energy blockages releasing can result in temporary disharmony. In modern energy work, it's called a detox or a healing crisis. But whatever the name, the experience is real. And it can be terrifying if you don't understand what's unfolding, which is why so many abandon the path at this point, not realizing that the discomfort is not a sign to stop but a sign to stay, to trust the process, to honor the body as it catches up with the soul. This is the time for deep care, for grounding, for listening. Your body is not betraying you, It is birthing a new you. Practices like breathwork, rest, movement, hydration, and solitude become sacred. You are not weak for needing space, you are wise. Because you recognize that spiritual growth without physical integration is imbalance. The awakened state is not disembodied, it is embodied. And to embody light, the vessel must be cleansed. You're not just healing your past, you're making room for your future self. And that future self is arriving, cell by cell, breath by breath. Can you feel it? The old you dissolving, the new you emerging. Not as an idea, but as a living, breathing truth. But here's the part no one warns you about. As your energy changes, your relationships often begin to shift too. People you once felt deeply connected to may suddenly feel distant. Conversations that once flowed may now feel empty. Even your own family might not recognize who you're becoming. This isn't because you're doing something wrong. It's because your frequency no longer matches the environments you once fit into. And that dissonance, it can hurt. It can feel like loss, like loneliness. And yet, within that space of emotional disconnection, something unexpected begins to grow. But before we get to that gift, we must first face what it means to walk through the valley of spiritual loneliness and emerge on the other side. You've opened the door, you've felt the stillness, you've endured the integration, but now comes one of the most unexpected parts of the journey, the loneliness. Not just solitude, but a deep, aching disconnection from the people, places, and patterns that once defined your world. Friends who once felt like soulmates suddenly don't understand you. Conversations feel hollow. Even surrounded by others, you feel unseen. And the most unsettling part, you can't go back, because somewhere deep inside, you know you've changed. And the life you awakened from no longer fits the one you're stepping into. This is the void space between identities, between timelines, between frequencies. It is not a failure, it is a spiritual rite of passage. But oh, how few are prepared for its weight. In ancient myth, this stage is often symbolized by the desert, the forest, or the underworld. It is the realm of disorientation, where the hero must walk alone without guidance. In the tarot, it is the hermit cloaked, isolated, carrying only an inner light. This phase strips you of attachments, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. As your vibration rises, anything not aligned with your soul's truth begins to fall away. And while this is liberating in theory, in practice, it can feel like heartbreak. You grieve people who are still alive. You question whether awakening was worth the cost. You long for connection, but find it harder to relate. This loneliness is not just emotional, it's energetic. Your frequency no longer matches what you once called home. The ego interprets this as loss, as abandonment. It clings to what's familiar, trying to resurrect old dynamics that no longer feel real. And yet, the more you resist this shedding, the more suffering you create. The truth is, this emptiness is sacred. It is space being carved out for something new, something truer. But in the moment, that offers little comfort. You may find yourself pulling away, isolating not out of choice, but necessity. You might question your worth, your sanity, your path. But hear this, you are not broken. You are not alone, you are in transition. And this transition is preparing you for connections that don't require masks, explanations, or delusion. Connections built on resonance, not obligation. This is where your spiritual muscles are truly tested. Can you stay with yourself when there is no one to validate your path? Can you hold your vibration when it feels like no one else around you sees it? This loneliness is not punishment, it is purification. It is a burning away of false belonging to make space for soul belonging. And it doesn't last forever. Though it may feel endless, it is a temporary passage, and like all sacred rites, it leaves you changed. Not just clearer, but stronger, wiser, more attuned to who you truly are, and ready for what comes next. Because in the stillness of this isolation, something begins to stir, a pull, a call, a magnetic attraction toward others who feel strangely familiar yet deeply new. People who reflect not who you were, but who you are becoming. And when you meet them, there's no need for translation, no need to shrink or explain, just a knowing, a resonance, a homecoming. But before we dive into this sacred reunion, pause here. Feel this silence. It's not empty, it's sacred. Because sometimes the most powerful connections are born from the deepest solitude. Something shifts quietly, after the stillness, after the loneliness, after the empty spaces where connection used to live. A magnetic pull begins to form, subtle, yet unmistakable. You start encountering people who feel oddly familiar, though you've never met them before. Conversations flow without pretense, eyes lock, and there's recognition, not of faces, but of essence. This is the moment many don't expect, when the universe, having cleared away what no longer aligns, begins to send you your true mirrors, your soul tribe, the ones who speak your frequency, not your language. And when they arrive, you realize the isolation wasn't a punishment, it was preparation. The soul tribe doesn't appear all at once. They come in waves, often slowly, like puzzle pieces arriving from distant places. You might find them in the most unexpected settings: a passing comment in a bookstore, a shared silence at a retreat, an online message that feels like destiny. These meetings defy logic. They aren't based on shared history, but on shared vibration. And the bond is immediate. There is no need to explain your awakening, no need to filter your truth. With them, your weirdness isn't tolerated, it's celebrated. These are the souls who see you beyond your words. They reflect the parts of you that were too strange, too deep, too much. And suddenly, you feel less alone, because you were never meant to walk this path by yourself. But here's the paradox: you could not have met them before your transformation. Because before the shedding, before the solitude, your frequency wasn't yet attuned to theirs. The isolation was an attunement. It stripped away the noise, so you could hear the resonance. Your loneliness recalibrated your field, and now, you no longer attract by habit, you attract by truth. That's why these connections feel effortless. There is no performance, no chase, no proving, just being. And in that being, you realize something profound: your energy does the talking now. Your presence does the attracting, and those meant for you will feel it. These relationships are not always romantic, though they can be. Often, they are creative, spiritual, healing, catalytic. They serve as reminders, as activators, as companions. Some stay, some pass through, but all arrive with purpose. And the gift they bring is not just connection, it's reflection. They help you remember who you are when you forget. They hold space when your own light dims. They challenge you to rise when you want to hide. Because soul tribes are not just comfort, they are catalysts, and their presence marks a new phase of the journey, not one of isolation, but of co-elevation, of shared evolution. And now that you've found them, or rather, now that you've allowed yourself to be found, a new question begins to emerge. One you may have felt rising for some time now: why am I really here? Because once you are held, once you are seen, once you are surrounded by truth, your soul begins to whisper again. But this time, the whisper is a call, a purpose, a deeper reason for all that you've experienced. And that purpose isn't out there waiting to be discovered. It's been growing inside you all along, like a seed in the dark. The time is near. And in the next part of our journey, we'll open that seed and ask, what is the new purpose that emerges after the awakening? There comes a moment, often after the solitude, the shedding, and the reconnection, when a new question rises from the depths: what am I really here to do? It doesn't come with urgency or pressure. It comes with clarity, gentle but undeniable. A sense that your existence is not random, that all the chaos and silence and revelation were building towards something more. But this purpose isn't the one you used to chase. It doesn't scream for titles, achievements, or applause. It doesn't fit into 5-year plans. It emerges quietly, like mist from the soul. And when it rises, you know this is not about becoming something. It's about revealing what you already are. The old version of purpose was external. It was shaped by expectation, survival, and identity. You may have followed it because it made sense, because it paid the bills, because it was what others applauded. But now, that model no longer fits. Because now, your compass isn't logic, it's resonance. And resonance isn't rational, it's felt. This new purpose may not make sense to others. At first, it might not even make sense to you. It may ask you to simplify, to slow down, to listen. It might look like art, or healing, or presence. It might call you to guide others, to write, to hold space, or simply to be. But make no mistake, its power lies in its authenticity, and its impact ripples quietly through every interaction you have. You may notice that this purpose feels more like a frequency than a mission. It isn't something you do, it's something you are. When you speak, it carries your truth. When you move, it shapes your energy. When you listen, it heals. This shift redefines productivity. It's no longer about how much you achieve, but about how deeply you align. The old metrics lose meaning. What matters now is integrity, embodiment, presence. This kind of purpose can't be faked, and it can't be forced. It grows from within, like light filtering through the cracks of everything you once believed you had to be. Many spiritual texts speak of Dharma, the soul's unique path of expression. Not a role to play, but a truth to live. In this phase of your journey, you begin to feel your Dharma more clearly. Not as a destination, but as a way of being, and you begin to realize that your wounds, your stories, your very transformation, they weren't detours. They were the path itself. The purpose is not separate from the pain. It is born from it. You were meant to be a lighthouse, not because you avoided the storm, but because you survived it. And now, your presence becomes guidance. Your authenticity becomes service, not as obligation, but as overflow. But here lies the final twist. Just as you begin to walk in this new purpose, you realize something else. There is no final arrival, no ultimate peak, only deeper layers. More embodiment, more becoming. The journey does not end with awakening. It spirals inward, endlessly. And just when you think you've found your highest expression, life invites you into an even deeper one. A softer one, a truer one. So the question is not, what is my final purpose? The question becomes, how deeply can I live from who I really am right now? And in the final chapter, we'll explore what it means to live not as the seeker, but as the path itself. There is a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when you stop seeking and start being. Not because you found all the answers, but because you realized the search itself was a mirror reflecting the truth that you are, and always were, the path. Living as your higher self is not a grand event. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives in the quiet moments. In the way you breathe, the way you speak, the way you hold space for others without needing to fix them. It is the moment when your presence becomes prayer. When your choices align so effortlessly with your inner knowing that you no longer question your direction, you simply flow. Many believe the higher self is a future version of who we are meant to become. But in truth, it is the deepest version of who we already are, not above us, within us. And it becomes accessible not through striving, but through surrender. Through peeling back every layer that isn't you, every belief, every identity, every mask you thought you needed to survive. What remains is raw, pure, clear, a consciousness that doesn't need validation to exist. A self that listens more than it speaks, and when it does speak, it does so with resonance, authority, peace. This is not perfection. It is presence. It is the embodiment of your soul's truth moment by moment. As you live from this space, life stops being something to control or conquer. It becomes something you partner with. Synchronicities don't disappear, they become internalized. Guidance doesn't shout, it whispers through intuition, sensation, and subtle nudges. You begin to see that every experience, every person, every moment is either a mirror or a lesson. Nothing is wasted, everything belongs. And from this lens, nothing can truly disturb your peace, because peace is no longer a condition, it is your natural state. This is not an escape from life, it is a deeper entrance into it, fully awake, fully alive, fully responsible for your vibration. Living as your higher self does not mean detachment from humanity. In fact, it is the opposite. It is deep intimacy with life, with your body, with your emotions, with others. You cry more deeply, laugh more fully, love more honestly, because you are no longer guarding your essence, you are expressing it. And in doing so, you become an anchor, a stabilizer, a walking transmission of light in a world that is still learning how to see clearly. You do not have to preach or persuade. Your being is the teaching, your alignment is the message. And this kind of quiet leadership has more power than any title, stage, or spotlight ever could. And now, as we close this journey together, a final truth emerges. There is no final truth. No end, only spiral after spiral, layer after layer. Awakening does not lead to a finish line, it leads to deeper embodiment. The further you go within, the more infinite the path becomes. You are never here to reach a destination. You are here to become the path itself. So live boldly, live gently, live truly. Not from who you were told to be, but from who you actually are: divine, human, eternal, present. The journey continues, not out there, but in here, always. You've made it here, and that alone speaks volumes. Not just about your curiosity, but about your courage. Few walk this path all the way through. Few still dare to sit in the stillness, face the shadows, feel the shedding, and rise anew. But here you are, and now it's your turn to share. Have you experienced this quiet phase after your awakening? Did it confuse you or empower you? Maybe both. Whatever you've felt, whatever you've seen, there's someone out there who might need your story. So speak, share your experience in the comments below. Your words could be the sign someone else is waiting for. And if this message resonated with you, if it stirred something deep inside, something ancient and familiar, then this space was made for you. We explore these truths not just to understand them, but to live them, to become them. So if you want to keep going, if you want to keep uncovering the hidden layers of this human and spiritual experience, subscribe, turn on the bell. Let the algorithm know that you are calling in more of this frequency. This isn't the end, it's the beginning of a deeper spiral. And in this community, you are not alone. You are seen, you are honored, you are part of something real. So until the next revelation, keep walking, keep feeling, and keep remembering you are not here to find the path, you are the path.